In a chilling scene set in a bluish darkness, Seo Heemin finds himself in a desolate basement, filled with the damp mold smell and the metallic tang of rust. The cold, stifling air makes it difficult to breathe, heightening his senses of smell, touch, hearing, and taste. Heemin waits for his feverish body to calm down, feeling as though the world has ended. Time seems to pass slowly as Heemin's fever dissipates. Struggling to adjust to the darkness, he repeatedly blinks, but it feels like a dark blue curtain obscures his vision. He stretches out a powerless hand, feeling the cold, chilling touch of a metal pillar that sends shivers down his spine. Realization dawns on him: he's in a cage. He should have been lying on a bed, but instead, he's trapped in an unknown place, surrounded by iron bars and rough wooden planks that creak with every movement. Fear grips him as the reality of his situation sinks in. Suddenly, the gruff voices of men echo in the darkness, calling for number 20, Prime Omega, to get ready. Heemin is bewildered by the term Omega and wonders if he's dreaming. The sensations he experiences eerily mirror the text he had read just before falling asleep. He recalls the BL novel his third sister had given him, disturbed by the main character sharing his name. In that novel, Seo Heemin, pursued by creditors after his father's death, is captured by human traffickers and sold at an Omega auction. Intrigued and repulsed, Heemin had read the novel Silence until dawn before drifting off to sleep, haunted by the grim ending he had skimmed through again before falling asleep. Reflecting on the novel, Heemin remembers his life as a book addict, frequently visiting the local library and borrowing his sister's novels when his preferred books were unavailable. He didn't feel particularly attracted to men but held no prejudice against homosexuality, partly due to his second sister having a same-sex partner. Contrary to his initial expectations, he found many BL novels to have deep, thoughtful content exploring love beyond gender and orientation. Heemin was particularly drawn to one author whose latest work, Silence, his sister had given him. Despite the Omegaverse world with alphas, betas, and omegas being initially hard to grasp, the novel's dark and desolate atmosphere captivated him, leading him to read it nonstop. The final scene, where Seo Heemin embraces the corpse of a man who died protecting him and then commits suicide, left a lasting impression with its profound monologue. As he pondered the symbolism in the novel and whether the characters would find happiness, Heemin found himself dreaming of being trapped in a cage, the creaking of the planks shattering his poignant reflections. "This is too real," he thought, as the vivid dream continued to blur the lines between fiction and reality. Seo Heemin's life, eerily sharing his name, was fraught with hardship. His childhood was marred by a traumatic incident that instilled a deep fear of alphas in him. This fear caused him to distance himself from his close friend, Cha Yahan, who later manifested as a prime alpha. Seo Heemin's school days were consumed by this trauma. Just as he began to find solace in drawing, his father's misdeeds, which had ruined Cha Yahan's family, resurfaced. This led to a series of unfortunate events, culminating in Heemin being sold and forcibly embraced by Cha Yahan, who had become an executive of a corporate gang. Heemin pitted Seo Heemin, who was forced to hate Cha Yahan despite secretly loving him. Each monologue by Seo Heemin brought Heemin to tears, the sorrow feeling like an old wound being reopened. In the present day, Heemin's vivid dream continued. He heard the murmur of dozens of voices and unfamiliar, unique smells pricked his nose. Pheromones, he realized. The scents were like ripe fruits, the heaviness of tree bark, and the salty scent of the sea. Unlike artificial perfumes, these were the natural smell of flesh. His instincts confirmed it. The fascination quickly turned to nausea, making his head spin. The once pleasant smells now upset his stomach. Heemin covered his mouth, retching continuously, but nothing came out, leaving a bitter taste. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he longed for the comfort of a simple bowl of ramen soup. Pinching his nostrils to block the smell, he held his breath, inhaling and exhaling through his mouth. Once he calmed down, a realization struck him. Only alphas and omegas could detect pheromones. Most of the auction participants were alphas. Remembering that Cha Yahan could feel alpha pheromones 10 times more intensely and even have adverse reactions, Yahan finally grasped the seriousness of his situation. The auction was nearing its end, and the MC introduced a very special omega, calling it the highlight item of the day. The curtain lifted, and the cage moved to the center of the stage along rails installed on the floor, making a buzzing sound. Bright pin lights shone on Cha Yahan from all directions. The intense lights overwhelmed him, bleaching his vision white and making him gag again. Cha Yahan, wearing nothing but a long white shirt, drew cheers and whistles from the participants as he stood on stage. The climax of the auction was fast approaching. Yahan grabbed the bars of the cage and called out to the MC in a colorful suit, hoping to calm his nauseous stomach since he knew Cha Yahan would buy him anyway. However, the MC ignored Yahan's pleas and continued introducing the product. Item number 20. Height 178 centimeters, weight 58 kilograms. Prime, no pregnancy experience. Desperate, Yahan shouted, "Mister, please give me some water. I feel like I'm going to throw up." Finally, the MC gestured to an assistant holding a long electric shock stick to give Yahan the water he requested. They didn't want the stage to be dirted with vomit. Soon, a cold bottle of water was placed in Yahan's hand. He drank hastily, aware of dozens of eyes watching him, even hearing someone gulping dryly. The bidding starts at 100 million won. 100 million. 200 million. 300 million. 300 million. Do I hear 400 million? The numbers soared, each bid marking another twist in Yahan's surreal journey through this harrowing auction. 500 million. 700 million. 1 billion. A telephone bid of 1.5 billion. The atmosphere in the auction hall heated up in an instant. Yahan, who had emptied half the bottle of water, wiped his mouth and began to look at the participants one by one with a relieved expression. Cha Yahan must be sitting somewhere, he thought. Throughout reading the novel, Yahan had been curious about Cha Yahan's face. This was because Cha Yahan, who both loved and hated Cha Yahan, shared the same name as Yahan's only friend. From the moment he opened the first page of the novel, Yahan was shocked. He knew his name appeared, but he hadn't expected Cha Yahan's counterpart and best friend to share the same name as his own friend. Initially, he thought his sisters were playing a prank by changing the character names. But as he read on, it turned out to be a mere coincidence that they had the same names. The two people were incredibly different. Firstly, their personalities were different, and secondly, their described appearances were different as well. In the novel, Cha Yahan was over 190 centimeters tall, with sharp and distinct features that drew attention and firm muscles showing under a taut dress shirt. Despite his attractive looks, his oppressive atmosphere, and the cold impression created by his furrowed brow made him seem ruthless. Yahan could only laugh at the description of Cha Yahan as a handsome man with a striking appearance, but a ruthless butcher who mercilessly killed people. The reason was that his friend Yahan had neither a fierce atmosphere nor furrowed brows. However, he did have a knack for making other men look like squids in comparison, making the term ruthless butcher quite amusing. Yahan's curiosity was piqued. "I'm curious. What does he look like?" he wondered, excited to see what the mobster, Cha Yahan, looked like. Someone raised their hand from the shadows, where the light barely reached. 50 billion. The deep, Low-pitched voice resonated clearly, and just from hearing it, Heemin knew. The man with a slightly thicker and heavier voice than his friend was undoubtedly Cha Yahan. Despite it being a reunion after 10 years according to the original story, Seo Heemin's body seemed to remember his presence distinctly, as evidenced by his rapid heartbeat. Frustrated by not being able to see his face properly, Heemin leaned out of the cage, forgetting that he had been sold for 50 billion instead of 30 billion as in the original story, eager to catch a glimpse of Cha Yahan. Heemin anxiously awaited Cha Yahan's arrival. As the pin lights turned off and the cage moved again, Heemin was transported to a container with yellow lights. After some time, a pair of black shoes with a strong and solid impression came into view. They were plain toe Oxfords, without any brogues. Heemin thought the shoes suited Cha Yahan's character well, a tyrant disguised as a gentleman, always acting contrary to this with Seo Heemin, causing rage. A deep, lingering scent of heavy musk, radiating presence, entered Heemin's nose. The bold pheromones matched Cha Yahan's personality, causing Heemin's breath to quicken. Heemin slowly lifted his head, taking in the long legs, the dress shirt highlighting chest muscles, the prominent Adam's apple, and finally, the face he had been so curious about. For a moment, he stopped breathing. How could this be? Seo Heemin. Would his friend look like this in 9 years? The forehead with sharp angles like a Westerner's, a strong nose like a mountain peak, a scar on the eyebrow creating a fierce impression, and a cold, expressionless face. Though his features were the same as his friend's, the intense masculinity, like a wild male emanating from him, was astonishing. He was both the Cha Yahan he knew and Cha Yahan. This is unbelievable, Heemin thought. Heemin realizes that although he had been possessed by a character in the novel, this world seemed to have been reconstructed by his subconscious. This realization dawns on him as he notices the uncanny resemblance between Cha Yahan and his real-life friend. Cha Yahan, with his pitch-black eyes that seemed to swallow the darkness, pierced through Heemin with a gaze that made his heart sink and his fingertips tremble. Cha Yahan's words, "It's been 10 years," carried a heavy weight. His gaze lingered on Heemin's cheek for a long time, sarcastically remarking, "You look well," despite Heemin's tear-streaked face being anything but. "You seem happy. Sold for 50 billion. Heemin felt a twisted sense of pride at having been sold for more than in the original story, but kept this thought to himself. Instead, he stayed silent as Yahan smirked and continued, "How much have you been through to put on such a pathetic show? Trying to catch the eye of some rich old man? You cost me an extra 20 billion. It dawned on Heemin that Yahan was referring to the moment he had begged the auctioneer for water. This realization hit Heemin hard, as he understood that it wasn't Seo Heemin's appearance that had driven the price up, but his own desperate action. He looked at Yahan with a surprised expression, digesting the unexpected turn of events. Inside the gently curving gaze of Cha Yahan, there was an unmistakable coldness. Despite the intensity, Heemin found himself drawn not to fear but to the subtle curl of Yahan's lips. It was a sensual gesture, yet entirely different in context, leaving Heemin intrigued by the complexity. "You're not even worth 10 million, but having a friend who's willing to sell his body for loose change is disgusting, isn't it?" Yahan's words cut through the air with precision, echoing as if scripted directly from the novel. Heemin bit his lower lip, unsure how to respond. "I need a hole to release my pheromones. I'll knock off 5,000 per screw." "No, let's make it 100 million. Try to be worth 50 billion to me." Heemin was supposed to respond with a line from the original script, "Just kill me." Instead, a burst of unexpected laughter escaped him. The situation was surreal. Seeing his friend utter such provocative words with that face was absurdly comical to Heemin. He couldn't stifle the laughter even as Yahan's expression turned sharply cold. What's so funny? There's such a huge gap from the real person. Hahaha. You must have been drugged out of your mind. Yahan's disbelief was evident, interpreting Heemin's outburst as the ramblings of someone affected by the drugs. Heemin, caught between amusement and nausea, had gone from gagging and desperate for water to laughing uncontrollably, a transformation that baffled Yahan. Dismissing Heemin's laughter with a disdainful toss of his chin, Yahan seized Heemin's wrist with a grip that momentarily destabilized him. Yahan scrutinized Heemin's arms, thin and pale under the harsh lights, noting the telltale marks of injections on his blue-veined skin. From his jacket pocket, Yahan retrieved a cigarette, placing it between his lips. A shadowy figure behind him lit it with due deference, casting a glow in the dim container as smoke curled sinuously into the air. In reality, Heemin occasionally smoked, but Heemin's frail bronchial tubes revolted against the acrid smoke. Heemin coughed uncontrollably. Yahan blew smoke deliberately into Heemin's face, eliciting stinging eyes and a raw throat that intensified Heemin's coughing fit. A fleeting smirk touched Yahan's lips. You really are a mess. Acting like a drug addict. His expression hardened into a scowl, the words delivered with icy disdain. Yahan regarded Heemin through narrowed eyes, as if observing a repulsive insect.